Hello everybody, and welcome to the second video in the hand-feeding series, supporting or discouraging mating, nesting, and egg laying. This video will cover all the basic things to take into consideration before your first egg is ever laid. Now this video is going to be a pretty massive information dump, as it is a topic that I have put a lot of research and thought into over the years. But I'll try to condense all that information and present it in a simple and straightforward way as possible. I'll only be going onto the surface layer on each topic, and anyone interested in knowing more about something can leave me a question in the comments or contact me through my Facebook page. There's still a lot of information to go through here, and chances are I will forget a few things and have to edit them back in. If you see any obvious cuts, that is probably what happened. And today I will have joining me my friends Jen and Levant. We have a son Connor and a Jen Day. They are bonded to each other and to me. And you'll see how well they do being with me as I make this video. They are both just a little bit hormonal. It is their time of the year. And although they are much too old to have a nest box, they still get a little grumpy and a little bitey. As for this video, it is mainly for those of you who are planning on having birdie babies, or those who have had a surprise clutch of eggs laid, or anybody who wants to reduce their bird's reproductive drive. For those of you interested in the hand feeding process for an older baby, maybe finishing off the hand feeding of a 6 or 7 week old, maybe given to you by a friend or a family member, you can skip ahead to the next video in the series. This one will deal mostly with the prep work needed with parent pairs ahead of breeding, and how to take good care of them during and after nesting. The main concern here is the responsible breeding in a safe manner that will preserve the health and happiness of the parent pair. Now, when considering the process of nesting, there are 4 main topics. First is the parent pair. Second is the environment they are in. The third will be their diet and supplementation, and lastly will be the mating, nesting, and the nest box. First topic, parents. For those considering letting a parent pair breed, the health and happiness of the parent and potential babies should be the primary concern. Happy and healthy parents will have happy and healthy babies, which will in turn grow and develop into happy and healthy and friendly adult parrots. Not much to go into for those who want to prevent laying in this section, other than the fact that a single bird obviously cannot have viable eggs. 2 males in a bottom pair will have no eggs at all. 2 females might lay eggs, but without divine intervention, there will be no babies. That is not to say that people should not have a male-female pair. By no means. These pairings often make for the happiest birds with the strongest bonds. Egg laying by itself is not the scary thing many people see it as. If proper care is taken, egg binding is not an issue, or at least not the huge issue it is made out to be. I have hundreds of eggs laid here each year, and I have never had a single instance of egg binding. A proper environment, proper diet, and proper supplementation goes a long way to prevent this. Egg laying is part of nature. It is literally what a female bird's physiology is designed to do. Oftentimes, if a female is restricted from mating and laying eggs for too long, signs of stress such as aggression or feather plucking can show up. Being able to lay and incubate at least 1 clutch in their lives, even if the eggs are replaced with fake plastic eggs, it can lead to happier and healthier birds. Now, for breeding, the first consideration should be the suitability of the parents themselves. Small birds like budgies should be at least 1 year to 18 months old, and larger birds like cockatiels and conures should be at least 18 to 24 months old. This will ensure that they are in a stable and well-bonded pairing, and that their bodies have fully grown into the task of laying eggs. The reproductive drive will be the highest during the first 2 or 3 years after maturing. And while it is possible for pairs to breed 2 or even 3 times a year during this time. Breeding should only happen once a year to preserve the health and safety of the parents. This drive usually falls off after the 2nd or 3rd breeding season, and it is best to retire parent pairs before they reach the age of 5 or 6 years. Good parents will be in a bonded pair that get along well together and will be showing signs of attraction to each other, such as close contact, preening each other, and many other common mating behaviors such as dancing, protectiveness, and mate feeding. This is where you will see the birds kissing, with their beaks locked together. Of course, they're not really kissing, they have no lips, but they will be feeding each other, regurgitating food. Oftentimes, you will see only one of the birds engaged in this, bringing up a wet mass of food and presenting it to their mate, or placing it near them at least. And now, not all bonded pairs will become breeding pairs. Sometimes they do get stuck in the friend zone. Some will mate but never lay eggs. Some will lay eggs but they are never viable. And some will lay viable eggs but they will never complete the incubation process. There is no real way to know ahead of time how successful a pair will be. Only time will tell, which is why most people planning on breeding will have several pairs of the same birds on the same schedule, hoping that at least 1 or 2 pairs will give them a clutch. Now, there are several important things to watch out for in a paired pair, especially once the stresses of an upcoming breeding season start showing up. Sometimes a previously friendly pair will turn on each other as the hormone levels begin to rise, especially if it is their first season. There can be fighting, feather pulling, over-preening, even hurt feelings over a rejection. An over-amorous male can sometimes overwhelm and stress out an unwilling female, and even more commonly, an overly aggressive or over-eager female will turn on a male that she finds unacceptable or unresponsive, sometimes even killing the male outright. And when breeding season approaches and the hormones start to rise, pairs must be watched closely for signs of fighting or squabbling. Keep an eye out for more feathers than usual on the bottom of the cage, and any wounds or bare patches of skin, and of course any blood smears on perches from bitten toes. A little squabbling is normal, but if signs of injury show up, then breeding inducements should be stopped until they can calm down again. If the fighting continues, and in rare instances, a pair might have to be separated for a while, although they should still be kept in sight of each other. Once the hormones are out of their systems for a while, things will usually go back to normal. And how do you know when the hormones are rising, even before the telltale signs and behavior? Trust me, it is something you will definitely notice with the rather unpleasant smell they release into the air, especially with cockatiels and linneys. When I walk into the cockatiel room here and I'm greeted with that pungent stench of hormones, I know it is time to put up the nest boxes and start giving them a little more food. And when one pair goes into season, other pairs in the area will notice, and they'll often begin their seasons as well. Finally, there are of course obvious reasons why that a pair should never be allowed to breed. Related pair, clutch mates for instance, should never be allowed to breed together. As well, birds with any health problems or hereditary issues should be kept from breeding for their own good and the good of future generations. It'll make me nervous. Pet birds that are bonding with people can lose that bond as well once they've had their first clutch. Oftentimes when breeding a pet bird, you will lose that bird as a pet, and the pair will choose instead to focus more on each other exclusively. At the very least, you will lose them as a pet bird in the nesting process, and several weeks before and after. I'm going to pause for a minute. My camera is going to run out of time on the video. Restart. There we go. My camera does not have very much memory, I gotta keep the cuts pretty short. I'll see about getting a better camera one day. Now on to the second part, the environment. The second main topic of interest in the nesting process is the environment that the parent pairs are kept in. I will say over and over again, happy and healthy parents make for happy and healthy babies. Keeping the parent pairs happy and healthy is a main concern. Cages must be large and roomy enough for flight, at least 30 inches across the front and 20 to 24 inches deep for most small and medium-sized parents. A cage should be sturdy, stable, and placed up against the wall to foster a sense of security. Out-of-cage time, free-fly time is especially important in the time leading up to a breeding season. Keeping them fit and healthy and entertained is important. Of course, once the breeding season starts, they will not be coming out of the cage much, if at all. They will want to concentrate on each other and the nest, and they will usually become aggressive and hard to control. They can become very aggressive to people and possessive and jealous of their mates. I have known several people who thought it would be fun to have some babies from their beloved pets, only to lose the affections of their pets permanently due to the hormonal changes brought about by a single breeding season. Hush up, you too, be quiet. Hormones can influence a pet bird to a great degree, sometimes even without a mate or a breeding season taking place. Puberty all by itself can bring about great changes when a young parent fully matures into adulthood. Some birds will start hating men, others hating women, some hating everybody. And while this change in behavior usually only lasts for a few weeks to months, some traits can become permanent. Other factors such as light schedule, temperature, and even humidity can induce or restrict a breeding cycle. That was much too loud, buddy. Whew. Most of the time, a day with longer direct light can be used to encourage breeding, which is one of the reasons why individual cage lighting is important. Even an inexpensive LED full-spectrum light bar found on Amazon for a few dollars can start or even prevent a breeding cycle. The best way to determine what light schedule. Very good. Your food. Now you can come back. The best way to determine what light schedule, temperature, or humidity to use to encourage or to sustain or even prevent a breeding cycle is to research the breed of the bird, what time of year they usually breed, and what country and area that they come from. Then, all you have to do is look up that country's weather cycle and match the sunrise and sunset during that time period. And you have your cage lights plugged into a timer that matches that cycle. You can even slowly increase or decrease the amount of bright light per day to simulate the changing of the season. To discourage breeding, you can change light cycle to match the time of year when babies are usually fledged, signaling the end of the breeding season. Temperature and humidity can also be used. You can make the house warmer or cooler and use humidifiers or dehumidifiers to increase or decrease humidity to match or contrast the conditions in the bird's native environment. The important thing to consider here is to keep all changes somewhat gradual to avoid stressing out your bird, and keep showing them all the attention that they want until they let you know that they want to keep themselves to themselves. Another great indicator of the beginning of a breeding season for a pair of birds here are the bloody wounds that they start leaving on their hands whenever I go into the cage to change out food and water. Right back, camera's out again. Well, he pooped on my head. You can buy these. You can purchase these in bulk as well off Amazon. Have to go bareheaded for a while. A rare occurrence. So, on to the next topic, which is diet. Now, diet and supplementation are also very important factors to consider during the nesting process. Not only for the birds that might lay eggs in the future. Come on, dude. The dog outside doesn't like me talking to other people. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, birds that might be laying eggs in the future, but also for those who might be laying a surprise clutch of eggs. It continues to be important in the recovery period after laying as well. A good complete diet will include things like seed, of course, but also a good amount of chop. Chop is a mixture of fresh vegetables, some fruits, and other fresh ingredients. Also needed is the supplementation of vitamins and minerals not found in the seed or chop in amounts high enough. Despite the popularity of a pellet diet in recent years, a good seed mix should still be the main diet, percentage-wise, of small and medium-sized parrots. This is where most of the calories, fiber, and fats that these birds do need comes from. A high-quality, simple seed mix should be offered every day. There will be information on the packaging for the amount of seed to offer, and I usually give them just a little bit more. I use Mother Nature's seed from Tin Ridge, made in Alberta. It is a good basic seed mix, no fancy stuff, no fillers, and it is a great value for the money. Best of all, it is a Canadian product. For parent pairs having a planned upcoming breeding season, I usually increase the seed amount offered by at least 50%, as an abundance of food available will help give the birds the confidence in food security to lay eggs. To discourage breeding, it is best to stick with the amounts recommended on your seed packaging, but by no means restrict their diet. Birds are not happy when they do not have enough food. Some people like to save a few pennies by blowing out the seed shells every day or two, and just adding enough new seed to bring it back up to the proper amount. This is very much a false economy. Seed is not really that expensive, and old seed will quickly become contaminated with waste, poop, even if it is not visually evident. Birds will also discard spoiled, rotten, or unsuitable seed, and you do not want that building up. Every day here I throw out all the old seed in every cage and fill it up with new. I then take this old seed, I run it through a seed cleaner that I constructed, and this will take out any of the spent shells, crumbs, dust, and any of the contaminants. This clean used seed is then used for the songbirds outside. They have a large outdoor feeder, or I give it to some friends I know that raise backyard chickens. Of course, a seed-only diet is never good for any parrot. That is why I feed chop to all my birds on a daily basis. Basically, chop is a mixture of vegetables, some fruits, whole grain pasta, soaked and boiled beans and lentils, sprouted seeds and beans, and other various treats, all chopped up medium fine and mixed together. This chop provides most of the other vitamins, especially vitamin A, that a healthy and happy parrot needs. It even has a rather high amount of calcium. Chop fed before the bird seed is fed, it fills them up nicely, and it can help prevent seed gorging. I would say about 98% of my birds here go crazy for this chop. Even the new rescues and surrenders coming in, although with some it does take a few days to a couple weeks before they really get the hang of it. It actually gives me a short period of quiet and calm every day, while all the birds scream and squawk when they see and hear the feeding trolley wheel into their rooms. Every cage falls silent as soon as the chop is given, and they start eating. Leaving the room once all the cages there have been serviced, all you hear is the quiet munching and the occasional click of a beak on the stainless steel dishes. The only vitamin not gained through the chop, or the seed for that matter, is vitamin D, and this is an animal product. This must be given through natural or artificial UVB light, or through supplementation, which I will go more into shortly. My full chop recipe is freely given on my Facebook page, and I encourage everybody to try it out. It is a great way to keep your parrots happy and healthy. It can be made fresh daily or made in large batches and frozen for up to 3 months. It is relatively inexpensive to make considering the amounts that you feed daily, just as long as you're not feeding too many birds. I'll also be making a video all about the making of chop, and it should be uploaded in a couple of weeks at most. Now, before talking about supplementation, the controversial subject of pellets. This is a topic I will go more into in depth on in a future video, but I will touch here on the highlights. I know that pellets are a very easy diet to give our pet birds. It is marketed as a complete diet and all that is ever needed, and that it should completely replace seed. Why? Because seed is bad, they're just fat and calories, and they will eventually kill your bird. I even transitioned all my birds here to a 30% pellet diet for a number of years. I did swallow the hype myself in wanting to give my birds the best. But all birds do in fact require fats in their diet, especially the good fats found in a good quality basic seed mix. Further, pellets are an ultra-processed food, and just like in humans, it can cause a variety of health problems. I once ate nothing but power bars on a 3-day camping trip. Do not try that at home. And pellets are also very high in carbohydrates. They have the vitamin and mineral concentrations that are just much too high, and this can just lead to more problems down the line. It is the equivalent of a person eating nothing but power bars and meal replacement drinks every day. Sure, it'll keep you alive for a while, but serious things will start going wrong sooner or later. Pellets are so popular because of their aggressive marketing program. You will see them recommended and of course sold by many veterinarians, and often through contract. And they are marketed everywhere on the internet as being the healthier choice to totally replace seed. In reality, there's only one study ever made about a pellet versus a seed diet. It has been called the Amazon study, and all the marketing and hype has been based off that one study. That study has since been recognized as being flawed, and its findings have been widely discredited. But it is still used extensively in marketing for pellets. Only a few points on this. The study only used a group of 7 parrots, and of those, 3 were in the control group, and all were the same breed of parrot. The birds were massively overfed a diet of seeds to skew results to a preferred conclusion, and no testing on the bird's weight, the blood work, feather condition, or the overall health was done. All conclusions were drawn solely from the nutritional value of what the birds ate, not from the effects of what they ate, what looked good on paper. And of course, the biggest problem, who funded this study, who was consulted, and who was referenced throughout, this study was that everybody uses as proof positive that pellets are the better diet. Yeah, a good part of that is known to have come from the companies that make the food itself, and this was not disclosed at the time. Now, of course, pellets can still be used, but only as a small part of a healthy, balanced diet that should first include seed and daily fresh chop. I have not fed pellets here for a long time, and I only provide it for those birds here that are here for boarding, and only when it is part of their usual diet. This not only saves me a whole lot of money considering the cost of pellets, but it also allows me to focus more on a more natural diet. For the most part, birds do not like pellets, and forcing them on a pellet diet can also bring up a lot of behavioral and personality issues. They are a non-natural, ultra-processed fad food, which is very profitable for the makers. It is very easy to use for consumers, but in my experience, it is not a good replacement for a proper diet. They are often used by breeders to jumpstart a season because of the effect that they can have on the bird's hormone levels. But I have found that having a happy bird is more important than having that artificial boost. Well, enough of that. I'll go more into detail in that in a future video. But now onto the subject of supplementation. a much more complicated but a very important part of a bird's diet. The most important supplement for a bird, especially before and after egg laying, is of course calcium. Seed diets are medium low in calcium, so extra must be included. My chop recipe, found again on my official page, is pretty high in calcium, having a lot of things like romaine lettuce and broccoli. But for egg laying, this alone is not always enough. The best way to naturally supplement calcium is through the use of cuttle bones and mineral blocks, which should always be present in a bird's cage. This allows the birds to self-regulate their calcium intake, and when you see all the powdery remains of a recently consumed mineral block, it's a good indication that the birds might be going into season. Ow. Ow. I also include a bowl of crushed oyster shells and a bowl of baked chicken egg shells. And this gives the birds more variety and encourages more self-regulation. You can also purchase and use liquefied and powdered calcium supplements given to the birds in their food and water, but great care must be taken not to overdose birds in this way. It can lead to kidney problems and many other issues. I only use these liquids or the powdered supplements in the rare cases that a bird does not use the other calcium sources by themselves. They're also quite expensive, and while effective, I do prefer a natural source. The other vitamin that is not found in seed nor in the chop is vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. It is a very important supplement because it regulates the uptake of calcium. Without vitamin D, all the calcium supplementation is pointless. The birds just won't absorb the calcium. Now, a good source of this is, of course, sunlight. But this can be hard to use effectively. You're risking the overheating of the birds in the summer, and sunlight is often completely absent in the winter. I do use artificial UVA and UVB lighting here extensively to help with this, and it is not really that complicated to use, but it can be costly, especially as the bulbs only last 6 months to a year before they need to be replaced. You can find these lights at most pet stores used for reptiles, and lighting purpose-made for caged birds can be found online and at specialty bird stores. They are expensive, but they're nice to have. Now, a great part of my vitamin D supplementation here comes through boiled egg yolks, a favorite treat for most of my birds. Every 10 days or so leading up to and after a breeding season, and every about 14 to 18 days throughout the rest of the year, I hard boil about 60 to 80 eggs, take out the hard egg yolk, and mash them to a fine consistency, and then serve them out to all my birds still warm. The egg yolk is very easily taken, and it is a great vitamin D supplement. As well, it's good for it is a good source of iron, folates, and good fats. And for those parrots that I do not want laying eggs, I simply reduce the amount of egg yolk given, and the lower protein level in their diet helps to discourage laying. And now on to the next part, nesting. And my camera's blinking, I'm almost full, like that. And now for the last topic in this video, nesting. You just poop on me. First he pooped, now she pooped. These are not birds that I hand fed myself, so it does not get poop training. Poop training is very handy, but it's best done when they are young. Helps keep your clothes clean. Now where was I? Nesting, yeah. The process of nesting itself. Of course, the main item you'll need to help with this is a nest box. Here we have an example of a wooden nest box purchased at many larger pet stores or specialty bird stores. Made from softwood plywood, they are perfectly serviceable and not too expensive. They hang from the side of a cage on the outside up near the top, and will probably require a hole cut out from the cage to allow entry. I do make my own nest boxes here as well, and every 4 or 5 years I will pick up some good hardwood plywood and spend a few hours in the shop making these. A little more expensive to make myself, but they do last longer and are easier to use. The hardwood plywood is easy to clean and to disinfect between clutches, and they stand up much better to chewing. These nest boxes will last for many seasons for a pair, while the softwood nest boxes are usually worn out after only a couple of seasons. Again, I'll go more into detail on nest box construction in a future video, but if you're making these at home, the biggest concerns are making them the appropriate size for the birds you plan on breeding. Too big and the nest will be too cold, too small, and it will get too crowded. The width of the entrance hole is also important. Too small and your poor birds won't be able to get in, and too large and your parent parrots won't feel secure enough inside to want to lay a clutch of eggs, fearing things like predation. Tables of sizes for different bird speeds for different bird breeds can be found on the internet. I know that there are also a lot of plastic nest boxes being sold in stores and all over the internet, often at great savings. I have tried out a couple of these myself, and none of them were at all usable. Plastic is not a natural material. It does not breathe. It holds too much humidity. I tried a few out with some budgies many years ago, and I would have to clean up the plastic nest boxes on a daily basis, as they would just smell horrendous. And any waste inside from the babies, the poop, would instantly rot. And obviously, all of those nest boxes with the little windows, so you can see inside, they're totally worthless. A lot of crap is being sold for birds out there, and they keep making it and selling it because people keep buying it. Now, once the nest box is hung, it does have to be lined with something soft inside. For this, I use a fine screen hardwood shaving. Not hardwood, white wood shavings. No fir or cedar, of course. And this can be found at any pet or feed store. Do not use any paper products, they will rot. Same as with hay, straw, or hemp products. And once the nest box goes up, you do not want to change anything or even to go inside until it is time to pull the babies. Once the nest box is hung, and if the birds are in the mood, you will soon see signs of nesting prep. The male is usually the first one to check out the nest box. He'll go inside and root around, making sure there are no predators inside. He'll then come out and present the nest box to his female, strutting around like he's taking complete credit for finding such a nice little house. Over the coming days to weeks, they will begin working the nest box, often taking some or even all of the shavings out, perhaps chewing the entrance hole a little larger, perhaps lining it with feathers or anything else found in the cage. It is a good idea to give them a little bit of paper, especially with lovebirds, with which to line the nest. And different birds will like different materials to work and build up their nest. But anything like string should never be given. It can be wound around a foot or a neck, and it can cause injuries. Some birds, on the other hand, will leave their nest just like they found it, not changing a thing and adding only their eggs. No, not on the head. You're just going to poop on the head again. And other pairs will want a completely empty nest to lay their eggs in. Every parent pair is just a little bit different. It's just, you want to keep a close eye on them, see what they're doing, try out new things, and just learn their individual habits. After a time of nest box working, many parent pairs will start to show mating behavior. This can include the male dancing for the female, spreading and showing off his wingspan, feeding her and bringing her treats or objects. And it's usually at this time that both birds, but especially the male, can become much more aggressive and possessive. If this happens, it's usually best to leave the birds alone in their cage and just let them concentrate on each other. If all goes well, this behavior can lead to the mating itself. Most birds will want to do this in private, often even in the nest box itself, or at least when nobody is in the room. Cockatiels, on the other hand, are often not shy at all about this. They will do it in plain sight, and they will be vocalizing loudly, proclaiming their love. Once you see that the female is spending most of her time in the nest, often with the male sitting on the perch outside at the entry standing guard, you will know that eggs are present or likely soon will be. They are in the process of being laid. Extra care must be taken at this time to avoid any disturbances, and it is best to keep your distance as much as possible, while still concentrating on things like temperature, humidity, and just giving them the best possible diet. During this time, you'll often find some extremely large and impressive poops in the bottom of the cage, as the female will only come out once or twice a day to do her business, and will just stay in the nest the rest of the time, and even be fed there by her mate. The eggs are not laid all at once, of course, but often one every 2 or 3 days, until a clutch of a suitable size is present. Often, during this egg-laying process, the female will spend a lot of time out of the nest. Don't worry, the eggs are not really being abandoned. She is just waiting for a full clutch to be laid before beginning the incubation process. The baby in the egg does not start to grow until a certain temperature is reached, and this waiting process is done so that the eggs will hatch closer in time to each other than when they were laid. Incubation for birds can take anywhere from 18 days for the smaller birds to 21 days to 24 days for birds like condors and quakers, and even longer for the larger parrots. If you're lucky, pretty soon you will start to hear a little peeping and chirping coming from the nest box, often the first sign of babies. Now comes the part that is the most stressful for people, supporting the parent pair and deciding when to pull the babies for hand feeding. Diet is always very important, and food in abundance must be supplied, especially seed. If the food supply is ever seen to be running out, smaller babies and even entire clutches can be abandoned. If the food supply is ever seen as being seriously in jeopardy, parent pairs can and will eat their young in order to recover the food energy used in laying. They do this to preserve their own health in order to have a future clutch with better chances. This does not happen very often, especially if care is taken and several sources of food are offered. In all my years of breeding, this has only happened to me once with a new pair's very first clutch, and it hit me hard enough that I did not offer them in that spot ever again. You okay now? Now, the hardest part is knowing when to pull the babies in order to put them into a brooder and begin hand feeding. This can often be a great source of anxiety, self-doubt, and self-questioning. But those hand feeders with some, and for those hand feeders with some, but not a lot of experience in hand feeding, waiting until the babies are 21 days old is a good start. This will mean that the oldest babies will not have had time to fully develop their fear response, although it could have begun. Mainly, it means that the youngest babies, often several days or even a week younger, will not be so young that hand feeding is a challenge to start. For those people with no first-hand experience of hand feeding on their own, finding a friend willing to help to let you finish off hand feeding a 6 or 7 week old baby is a great way to get experience at a much lower level of risk. I did this myself with first lovebirds, then cockatiels, and this gave me the confidence to begin by myself with budgies at about 18 days of age with only a little trepidation. Those more experienced with hand feeding can begin pulling babies at 14 days or 2 weeks of age. For the last several years, I've had great success pulling at 10 days of age. just before the eyes begin to open. This does mean that the youngest babies are still very young when pulled, as it is usually best to pull an entire clutch at once, and they are indeed more of a challenge to begin hand feeding. They will often also require a hand feeding in the middle of the night to see them through until the morning, so you better make sure that you are up to this task before beginning. You also have to watch the nest carefully, make sure that the babies are being fed and cared for properly. Starting on about the third day after the first baby is hatched, you can carefully take a peek inside to make sure that all is well. I wait until the third day because that is usually the youngest that I am wanting to pull the baby for emergency hand feeding if things go wrong. And opening up the nest box can spook some parent pairs, especially if it is their first clutch. At 3 days of age, the baby usually has developed enough that they will only need to be hand fed every 2 to 3 hours if hand feeding is needed. And with only a couple of middle of the night feedings needed. You do not want to pull a newly hatched baby for hand feeding on the first day unless absolutely necessary and it is completely unavoidable. A newly hatched baby will require feedings every hour to every hour and a half around the clock for the first few days. For me, this means sleeping in this hand feeding station chair with an alarm going off throughout the night every hour. I only get to sleep about an hour at a time, and that is not easy to do for any extended period. In addition to this, you have to worry about providing the proper gut flora, usually given by the parents, and practicing highly increased hygiene, as the babies will not be receiving the immunity through their parents' crop milk. Again, hand feeding from day one is not something you ever want to do. It is a high-risk, high-effort operation that really provides no advantages, and should only be done if you are absolutely certain that a baby has been abandoned permanently. This is rare. We have probably all heard about the news reports every spring with all the people bringing in baby songbirds they think were abandoned in the wild and in need of rescue. When really the people were just being a little overeager to help, and the baby birds would have been just fine. That being said, you do have to keep a close eye on the clutch to know when to pull. The first babies to hatch will of course be larger than their younger nestmates, and the differences can be quite dramatic even with only a few days of growth. The larger babies will be able to reach up higher and make more noise in the nest box, and this results in more frequent and larger feedings and a higher growth rate. Younger babies will be smaller and they might not be fed as much, further slowing their growth. After a certain point, this difference in size can become a danger to the younger babies. They can be trampled, smothered, or ignored for feeding completely. If you see this happening and you are sure that it is happening, it is best to pull the whole clutch for hand feeding. You also have to watch for an abandoned clutch. If both parents have been out of the nest for most of the day, and the babies inside are cold and unfed, with flat, empty crops, the nest might be abandoned. This does not mean that you should pull babies if both parents are out of the nest for a little bit, even for a few hours. They might just be taking a break, and the babies will be fine. But if you are sure that a nest has been abandoned, then the babies should be pulled, put in a brooder to warm up, and then immediately fed. Now, in nature, only about 30% of babies hatched make it out of the nest. Life is hard for a baby. In captivity, the rate is higher, about 60 to 80%. Now, when a baby is pulled and put into a brooder for hand feeding, that rate should be 100% or pretty damn close. When a baby goes into a brooder for hand feeding, the survival should be pretty much guaranteed. If your survival rate drops below 95%, then there is something going wrong with the hand feeding process, and changes will have to be made. My survival rate here is something like 99.8%. If I lose more than one baby a year for any reason, then I know something is wrong and something needs to be fixed. Fortunately, I have not had to fix anything here for a very long time. Oh, my phone's beeping at me again. My camera, not my phone's over there. There we go. I promise I'll get a new camera soon. I just have to win the lotto. I just have to start playing the lotto, then I'll win the lotto and get a new camera. Anyway, those were the 4 major topics on nesting and preparing for a clutch. The parents, their environment, their diet, and the nest box, and then the nesting process itself. By changing certain factors, you can encourage or discourage egg laying. With a stricter diet, a shorter day to night cycle, and the absence of a place to nest, egg laying can be discouraged. On the other hand, by paying attention to all the needs of a breeding pair, you can give them the best chance of being happy and healthy, laying good strong eggs, and having happy and healthy babies that will grow up into happy and healthy young adults. And the last word is, now when we encourage breeding and later pulling a baby for hand feeding, we are taking responsibility for the baby away from the parents and taking it on ourselves. And from that point on, we are under an obligation to provide the best chance for that baby to not only grow, but to thrive. We must be willing to do and provide the very best conditions for them as we are able. And that will lead into the next video in the series, that's on brooders and the process of brooding while hand feeding. This video should be put out in about a week or less, and I will talk to you again then more about the hand feeding process. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit through this big information dump, and I will be looking into how to make a manuscript of this video available. Now I thought I'd give you a little more information about my 2 friends here, Jennifer and Levant. Jennifer I rescued, or I picked up from a pet store many years ago now. She was a rescue in the pet store, and she was looking a little rough in the pet store. So I talked to the people there, and they let me take her home because they knew who I was and what I did, and they knew that I would take good care of her and make sure that she got healthy again. For many years she was fine. She was totally bonded to me, and she would get a little hormonal, a little cranky once a year, like she is doing now. But one year I saw that she was going into a high level of stress, and she was beginning to pluck. She was getting very aggressive with me, and I kind of came to the conclusion that she had never been allowed to breed. She never had a mate. She had never had a friend to bond with. So I thought that I would give her a hand-fed male sun conner as a companion, one of my hand-fed babies. She wanted to have nothing to do with him at all. And she continued to show signs of stress, more plucking, more aggression, decreased appetite. At that point, I was lucky enough, come here you, that Levant here, a sun conner of the same age, he came in as a surrender here. I put the 2 of them in cages side by side so they could see each other and maybe make friends, just to see what would happen. That night I turned off the lights, I left the room, and he's just hungry, he's just eating his chop. And I came back in the morning, I saw that her cage, the door was open, the cage was empty. I looked at his cage, his door was open, and she was in there with him. And they were being active. She was making up for lost time. They were getting busy. Apparently Jen here had figured out how to open the cage door. I would close the latch, but I wouldn't lock it. She knew how to open it. She just didn't show me before. She opened her cage door, went next door to Levant there, opened his cage door, and went in. And started to get romantic. They were both a little too old to lay eggs safely and have a clutch safely, so I did not give them a nest box. But about 6 weeks later, they were in the same cage, of course, by now. She was sitting on one single egg on the bottom of the cage. And she was sitting very tight on that one egg, on the bare metal bottom of the cage. So I put in a nest box, aligned it, I put the egg in the nest box, I put her in the nest box, and she didn't lay any more eggs, but she sat on the one egg very tight, and it hatched. And I had a little baby Sunday Connor, half Jenday, half Sun. A very friendly baby, who I believe is now with a nice family on Vancouver Island somewhere. And it just goes to show that with birds, they are such complex creatures, you really have to pay attention to their needs, and their not only their physical well-being, but their psychological well-being. Now these guys have never been offered a nest box again. They are past the breeding age, but she got her breeding urge worked out of her. She never laid an egg again. They do still mingle. But being together in a pair makes them happy, and in the end that's what's really important. They're both bonded to me and they're both very tame. Although we are still working on poop training. They're both on my shoulders for several hours a day. And once they're not hormonal, in a few weeks, things will be a lot more friendly. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.